we now have a quorum. So might as well just, so we have a, hold on, there's somebody else coming in. Just put them on. So I'm going back to my old way of calling this meeting to order without a vote. So calling the meeting to order of the Sherborn Conservation Commission, March 17, 2020. First order of business is we have a revised agenda where the only two items are the notice of intent for 0 Maple Street and the request for determination at 9 Kendall Avenue. And I would entertain a motion to adopt a change to the agenda to just include those two items.
Second.
Thank
No,
you.
it's so moved.
Oh, so moved, excuse me.
Yeah,
There you
he's
go.
looking for a motion.
There you go. I figured I'd pull out some select board motion tricks. So, all right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, Carol?
Aye.
Neil, I, Michael,
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we've got a couple of minutes before 0 Maple Street. So are there any additions to the agenda that could not have been anticipated 48 hours in advance?
Not for me.
Great. Okay. Any other sort of last minute business before we jump into 0 Maple Street? No. All right.
Do you want to do a poem? I found a poem, Neil.
Oh, go for it. That'd be perfect.
Okay. Well, I rediscovered a book called On Wings of Song, which you probably can't see very well because I'm blurring my background, but it's poems about birds. This is called The Eagle, and it's by Alfred Lord Tennyson, and it's short. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed with the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt, he falls.
I like that.
Hmm.
Thank you. All right, it's 7:30, so we'll continue. I will open the hearing or reopen the hearing into 0 Maple Street, NOI. I see we have Dr. Wang here, so thank you for coming. And while I was not here last time, I did have the opportunity to review the recording of the last meeting. So I feel I'm up to speed and able to vote on this and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to, but at the same time, I wanted to maybe, I don't know, Michael, do you feel like it makes some sense for you, since you've done a fair bit of sort of advanced work on what the outstanding issues are? Does it make sense for you to maybe give us a high level sort of recap where we are? Are
Sure.
you prepared to do that? That'd be great. Thank you.
Basically, after our last meeting, we sent comments on the application to the applicant, and then they replied. There was a March 8th sending of them of an email, and then they replied on the 10th. And we, in which case the applicant has submitted new plans where they're now down from the original almost 10,000 square feet of alteration to the buffer zone to about a little over 3,500 square feet. And they've also enhanced the mitigation in terms of the area of mitigation is significantly greater than the area of alteration, and there's much greater density of plantings offered to enhance that mitigation in the outer buffer zone. And there's a number of fine tuning or so going over some of the details of this. But now the buffer zone is at least 65 feet in width. At its closest point there. Overall on the in the buffer zone, it's probably an average of 90 feet or so. And from one commissioner's point of view, myself, I would say that what they last sent on the 10th and the new plans is a good starting point to try to refine that against what we had talked about in terms of mitigation plantings and what. But I'd like to sort of see that, I think, whether we all agree that it's a reasonable starting point, and we just sort of march through some of the list of issues I have where it might have differed, or some questions that I have, and maybe others do, so that we can see if we can reach some closure on this.
So I reviewed things and looked at what Michael had sent, and I'm conceptually, I agree with the approach. So but Carol and Courtney, I wanted to get your feedback as well.
Let Courtney go first.
I'm on board with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the concerns I have are more like looking at this. I think one thing that we had asked for was, could there be more mitigation in the part of the property between the 100 and 125 as a way of like enhancing that habitat and kind of being a replacement of upland habitat. So that was one thing that I wanted to understand better about that. I do see that they've done that there's been an additional effort to preserve some of the larger trees, the pine trees, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I forgot to note that the tree cutting is down from 19 to 11, and the tree replacement is up to 21 tree, albeit smaller. Okay, then I'll march through there. I'll just try to do a quick maybe comment on one of your points, Carol, about we have to go over, maybe as a discussion item, to what extent we want mitigation in the 100 to 125 that we can enforce, and how we can condition that kind of thing. I think at this point now, given the ratio of area that they're enhancing in the outer buffer to even what they're altering, and there's room to do the mitigation within the buffer zone. So without dancing on that issue, but I think it's an issue that we just need to resolve, because I think we might have done it once maybe, but I can't remember. I have concerns about how we do that. So I think we should just take that up another time, and see how we feel about the justification for that. But I think we can do without that in this project. Should I just march into some issues?
Please.
Okay. I would say, Deshang, appreciate all the extra changes that you made there. I would say I'll start with, I'm going to sort of walk through the layers of mitigation, so to speak. And then there's a few, besides, it's really a lot of about some details around the enhanced thing, and then a few other specifics related to the stormwater plan and whatever. But starting with the trees, with the new reduced cutting, and we used the formulas that we were recommending in the mitigation suggestions in the email. The formula, there's only a difference of about 2 trees. We have 21, you have 21 trees. With the new cutting that you have there would be 23 trees. I'd like to see if you go up to 23 trees, and I'll acknowledge that one of your concerns was the spacing of the trees. And that you interestingly put the canopy on there. One of the things that maybe wasn't clear in our comments was that given whatever spacing we do for the trees, we'd still like to go to 23, that some of the trees could be planted in other parts of the outer buffer zone beyond the mitigation area that you have marked there. So that actually, before I go down that road, I actually want to bring up a larger point as to the hi James and bye. I have to pay respect to the next generation that's coming here.
Appreciate his
Yeah.
participation.
We're protecting the wetlands for him too.
Sure.
Yeah, I actually want to step back at a bigger picture on the whole. There's a lot of details in going into the landscaping plan and the details of the mitigation. What I'd like to suggest to the commission is that that some of the issues about spacing and density and whatnot we'll talk about, but I'd like to think that we might condition this project where and whether it also works for the applicant, that we would say that a detailed landscape plan will be developed before the beginning of work, or I guess we could decide whether it's the first stage of work. And that tonight we basically focus on agreeing on sort of the quantities of different things in the areas where you'd have the enhanced buffer zone and the mitigation there, so that we can just focus on numbers of trees or shrubs, maybe some types, but maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe once we agree on some quantities and some areas of where the planting will be, that we can put off coming up with a detailed plan as to species and spacing and clumping with specific ground covers, that we can do that in a final landscaping plan that you come up with later, that where we go much more into detail of different species, because we have comments on it now. But I'd like to think that whether we can do it in that sort of 2 steps, because I think it would be hard to go through the mix of what particular shrubs we want, that we don't want mountain laurel, the blueberry, the holly, the sweet fern, we could have the sweet, but we could go into some species. Does it make sense to you that we could do it in that kind of staged way to get through the permitting part? And then later on, there'd be a condition that would be part of the order of conditions where you'd have to come back with a detailed plan with the spacing that we would consult on in preparation with our agent. And then the commission would just approve that at a later date.
Yeah, if I don't know if I like to wait until the commission gave all your thoughts and the comments. So
Okay.
then maybe I can address the suggestions. I mean, just
Okay.
tentatively, I don't see any issues with it, but I just want to see if I have all the
Okay.
points, comments I can take care of in one shot and see what is the best road to implement. Because I think at the end of it is the implementation, and to make sure we are getting
Okay.
the right things you want, and it's also hopefully it's beneficial to the
Good.
owner in
Okay.
the
Then
future.
let me plow on. Let me plow on, and we can revisit that issue in
Mhm.
terms of how we get to. On the trees per se, I'd like to suggest whether you would agree to the 23 trees, and that the spacing and that the planting of those trees would be in a mixture of the mitigation area that you've marked on the plans, as well as, to the extent that we feel like some of the spacing is too tight for the ventral crowns, that some number of trees, possibly, we don't even have to specify the number now, or we can come up with a number now, could go in to, I'm going to actually share screen there. Whoops, hold on. I got the wrong thing here. Excuse me.
Michael, I have it up. I could share my screen.
If you have the plan itself there, I mean, I just have it right here. I could just, because I want to circle a few things. That besides the trees going in here that you were feeling were a little dense, that that some of the mitigation planting could go in areas out here or around in here, so that we don't have to deal with the spacing right now, and that we could, and that would address your concern that the number of trees do not, quote unquote, reasonably fit in the mitigation area that you've outlined here in green. So just sort of trying to move through this, would you, is that something that would be acceptable and that we would go to 23 trees? We don't have to pick which goes, we can pick up which ones go here and which ones go there if we get to that point. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I have no problem with it. Just where the trees go, I did my on-site tree survey and to put the trees where I think it's more habitat. Right now is fitting those trees. So you can see where the trees we cut is clumped with the evergreen pine trees. Okay, and then in the back is basically all more like a hardwood trees. So definitely I don't want to put in things where it doesn't fit, and later on we have to monitor it to make sure it survive. So that's just technical perspective. If that technical agreed, say, well, in the back we only keep the decidual trees, like we observed oaks and American beech, some, not even much of a red maple because that area is very high. So if based on the ecological habitat I observed, that's how we designed it. So we are not just arbitrarily throwing the plants over there. And also for the consideration, even though I understand the commission's concern is to protect the wetlands, but at the same time, we are putting a people habitat there. So we should consider what the people living there, what they would expect. So that's why I put some evergreens in the front, which again is not probably the core habitat, or so it's quite far away from the wetlands. So we try to enhance a little bit screen growth. That's why we proposed evergreen. So therefore, so Maple Street is still a pretty busy street, as you know. So it's good to have a group of evergreen trees there. Mountain laurel is, I have myself, on my own property, I have quite a few mountain laurel and rhododendrons. I have so many trees, I have to wrap up my emerald arborvitaes, but they don't need evergreen, giant green arborvitae, or they don't eat the mountain. At this species, I picked the pink rhododendron. So maybe the tree, the deer in Sherborn is quite different from Southborough. So, but,
Well, the deer,
They
the deer
do
do
eat
have.
it. I'm afraid to
any
tell
species,
you.
any species, I would be interested to, because I'm very interested to understand what the I plant. I mean, on my property, I plant more than 200 trees. Okay, after I built my own house, and I'm keep still planting it, and I observing all the winter, spring. I want to see, and I when I buy it, I check their condition, whether they are deer proof, and then I plant it and I observe it. So there's sometimes deer does try, trying to grab in one or two pieces, but they don't. After they say that's not what I want, and then they stop. That's
Well,
my observation.
Well, I'm going to have to stop in the sense that I guess we have to figure out as a commission then about whether, right.
If I may suggest it, so the
We
tentative.
just have to get over that species issue of what's going to survive the deer or not is also dependent on what there's the risks to the homeowner of surviving the 2 growing seasons. And having a survival rate, and with the things like the arborvitae being something that's particularly delicious.
Emeralds, not giant, not giant green, so not green giant. I know that for sure.
Well, without getting into the species selection issue at the moment, whether the issue of whether the density of trees, whether, I guess I'm asking for both number of this. So you feel comfortable with the layout of fitting 21 trees in what you've proposed there, even though about 5 of them are in theory outside of the buffer zone. At the front of the house, you've basically grouped essentially 8. It's almost all 10, half the trees are all grouped in the very front here. But otherwise you're showing that the crowns of the remaining ones will do some coverage there. I'll just ask you whether you're willing to go to to try to get through this process. Whether you're willing to go with the ratios that we had suggested and go to 23 trees, so we can just get the numbers straight.
No, I said,
Um,
okay, I said, I
okay.
already acknowledged that.
Okay, well,
I
sorry, I missed
actually
it.
checked, I would need to check that, my calculations. I saw 21 was the number
I can
based
show you
on.
I can show you the calculations after.
Yeah,
we
based
get
on
through
your
this.
schedule, but if I made a mistake, that's okay. I
Fine, we have
can,
the-
we
Okay,
can
so
get-
with the tree
we can
issue,
get-
we have this issue of species. There's a little bit of species selection that we have to sort out, and maybe we'll just come back to. I just want to get through so we have issue of some species choice, especially whether we have some difference opinion about the workability of of your arborvitae. But okay, in terms of the tree stuff, well, all right, we'll come back to. I'm going to move on to the whole overall picture of the shrub level there, where you're proposing clearly more shrubs. We have some issues about some of it. You're up to 33. Some of the formulas we gave you there will be 140. I could see in a big area like this, if we just did an overall density of even 6 by 6, it would be for this. I would even say, even though you're giving over 6,000 square feet that you're enhancing there, I would be willing, I think a suggestion is that even if we just use the altered area of 3,600 square feet roughly, at the 5 by 5 spacing, which might be a little tight overall as an average, that would be 140. But if we went to 6 by 6, that's about 100 plants. If we're getting plants that would mature larger, that there's a reasonable gap there, and whether we could find a way that we feel that the shrub layer can be improved in terms of the mitigation that's being proposed, and that whether there's either clumps of that or whatever, but that that we could have and even spreading 100 plants over the sort of 6,000 square feet is probably closer to, let's say, divided by 6, it's 14. That's almost like 8 by 8 spacing or something. I'm being very crude in the calculation. So, so therefore, I'd like to think that I'd like to see whether you would increase the shrub level significantly. Let's see, it's because
Like you
now the
want,
density is only, the densities are going to be about at 8 by 8 as an average over it, and we would even think that would be nice to do some clumping. What do you think about that issue of boosting the shrub level?
Okay, so first, if Mike, if you really want me comment on as a professional wetland scientist, I have done so many wetland applications, and I can comment on your 5 by 5. I don't know.
It's all right.
Phil,
I've already relaxed it to more like an 8 by 8.
Yeah. Okay. So first comment. So I would say you're looking over there. The area we altered almost have no shrubs. Okay. If you go look at there. So in a way, we get to be measurable, compensate to whatever we alter. That's one. And second is the landscaping kind of planting density is not really good for wildlife, because wildlife habitat as a functionable, you have to have 7 factors. All right. The first one is, of course, the food diversity. And second is called edge. Even deer, they need to go through. If you put in the clumping too dense, what is good for them? So if you have high bush blueberry, they cannot even get to it. So what I mean, for some of the creatures, there's no point. So the one as a DEP guidelines for shrubs is all 8 feet. So for trees, that's even in the wetlands. So it's, if you look in the upland area, I gave you my statistics. I did all the tree count in this 10,000 square feet of area, total 19 trees. If you go to divide it, what is the space? And when I can give you photo, I did experiment. I planted trees at my house, and some of them is under the canopy. It's already 10 years. The ones in the sun, it's already grown to 20 feet. And the one I put under the shade, because already have a canopy, is still like about 6 feet. I mean, you won't believe it. If I take a photo, I maybe just for your information, is my personal firsthand experiment. I plant white pine, okay, one in the sun, one under the canopy, and everybody come in here and say, hey, what's going on? I show them it's still 5 feet. I take a photo. I mean, I plant the same time, and it's already 10 years now. The other ones grow to about 6, 8 inches diameter. The other one's still like in 2 or 3 inches, no more than 3 inches and 8 feet tall. So I just want to make sure I'm not trying. I mean, the commission also as a professional, I like to work out something really good for our environment, working with the commission for the benefit of our environment, right? So I just want to see things are workable. If we are going to be conditioned to monitor it for 2 years survival rate.
Okay, then we have to come to some terms on the thing there. I'm gonna let Carol speak and then Anna, so that we can maybe see if we can figure out a resolution on the shrub level and then move on. Carol and Anna, take your turns. You're muted, Carol.
The chair should be recognizing us, Michael.
Well,
You can go ahead. I'm sort of letting him run the discussion, so I don't mind.
That could be a slippery.
Sorry if I exceeded my.
It's okay.
So Dishang, I actually agree in principle with much of what Dishang is saying, simply because this is a part in the areas that are not going to be disturbed very, through the course. And I'm not absolutely sure where that is, which areas won't be disturbed, but in the areas that won't be disturbed, I think that we should put enough of a shrub layer that, for instance, the homeowners are not tempted to turn it into lawn, right? We want to just make sure that it really is habitat. So the area that I'm thinking of, Michael, or whoever is moving their cursor.
That's me. This is the area that we're discussing. This green area is all the subject matter.
So Michael, go over to the left as I see it on my screen. If you look at that, most of the trees are remaining intact there. So there, I could understand that we don't want a very big density of shrubs there. Now, having said that, Dishang, you just mentioned white pines, which of course they're like pioneer species. Of course, they grow faster in the sunlight. But if we put shade-loving shrubs here, then they should do okay.
So what density would you put around here? In terms of, that's what we have to come down to tonight, is we have to pick some number of shrubs based on.
I mean, I like your idea, Michael, of clustering them. Like, for instance, I color coded the white pine. There's an SM, there's an RO. They were all, what is SM and RO? Like there was a red oak, I guess, that was either and also a sugar maple. Can you see those that I think are the ones that are already there? And they kind of create a triangle. And I would say, yeah, let's create kind of clusters, not close to the roots, not close to the trunk.
Yeah, by all means, right. There's not a lot of area there because this obviously the area for planting is reduced by tree things. The question is whether I'm trying to come up with a number of plantings that we can then come back to, whether we're going to figure it out tonight or whether it's going to be part of a refined plan where it gets put here. That comes later. But whether because this area here might be 2,500 square feet or something like that. And if you did 10 by 10 spacing, that's 100, you might have 26 plants or something like that. And
When you say
whether we
10 by
could clump
10
them.
spacing, do you mean on each plant on a radius of 10 feet?
Well, I'm just trying to think, even if you clump them, I'm trying to come up with some sort of.
I mean, you typically describe that as being on a radius of a certain number of feet, which is the mature size of the shrub, right? So,
Right,
you know, if you had a shrub dogwood, the mature size is somewhere between, you know, probably around 4 feet. So if you decide to do a cluster of those, you would, you know, you'd have to take that into account. So I feel like it's hard. I think actually it would be a good idea for Desheng to think about it and come back with those considerations in mind. So we're coming up with something that ecologically will work.
that's what I think
because-
he's done. He's proposing that. That's what I see as his arguing, is that he's done something that is reflecting what makes sense in that area. And the question is whether we feel like the 33 shrubs, even if we have some issues about like mountain laurel, might be just too deer attractive. And that we'd rather have something else, whether it's spice bush or sweet pepper bush or something
Yeah,
that,
Yeah, if I may just quickly explain.
but I'm just
my
trying to get to a
mechanism.
closure.
Okay, yeah, I think that the number I coming up is not arbitrary, just my.
Oh, I agree.
Just, yeah, so in a way, if you use the 3,539 divided by 8 foot spaced, so it's like a 50 something, let me see, plus the 23.
What are you
So
trying to
it's
do?
about 55 plants. And that I minus the trees we are planting 23. So this is 32 or 33 shrubs. Okay, that's because you cannot put in a tree. And some of the concern, especially the existing undisturbed area, there's trees there. You want to put 2 dense shrubs over there, you're going to hurt off the root system of the existing trees. So we get to be balanced that kind of concern. If you feel, okay, I just want to dumping things there. If it's totally vacant, it's a different issue. We have all existing plants there, and especially this area don't have that many invasive species. You want to get the native one killed out, and then later on you have invasive species coming in, especially if you destroy a big tree, you know. Then you
Desheng, this is one of the reasons that I would suggest. I don't remember exactly what was in that 100 to 125 area where we would essentially be extending the buffer in a way by doing that and creating some upland, but it looks like it would be disturbed. And to be honest, that seems to me to be a better mitigation for exactly the reasons you're saying, that, you know, for the areas that are undisturbed, like the area we were just talking about, you know, too much planting is going to introduce the possibility of invasives, whereas, and it doesn't really add that much to the habitat. Whereas if this area between 100 and 125 is going to be disturbed and we restore it with plantings that are native plantings, then that's a net positive.
But they're asking for lawn in that area. There's no area of the 100 to 125 that is not lawn. And I know,
Well,
sorry,
that's where I'm suggesting that
Yeah.
but,
plantings.
and I guess I'm almost, I don't know whether to
And
say.
Desheng just said that he was open to planting there.
Yeah.
If you-
Let Anna speak, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Anna.
Thanks. I have 3 things to say now. A question for Dr. Wang. What are the circle? I'm not sure I get on the plan what the circles are. I thought they had to do with crowns, but there are some that are just enormous.
Yeah, well, you'll see we are probably the only company at this so far I have seen with any landscaping plans. I always research the mature size of the trees, shrubs that are going to be planted. And it started with my own experience for landscaping my house, and people putting something beautiful looking. And then a few years I have to cut it because it grows too quick, too close, and to where you don't want it, okay? So the circle is for the trees. We are planting around with the crown size. So that's those circles. It's not the existing one. So we didn't put the existing tree crown there. So all the trees we added to it, you can see without the existing, it's already have some overlapping. If you add in the existing trees on it, it would even more denser. And so you get to consider, I don't mind to say, well, that's why we put there, when you see, that's all the trees we are going to add to it. Those are the
Okay,
circle of.
makes sense. Thank you. And then as far as putting plants in the 100 to 125, I don't get a vote, but I think it's a really good idea, except that you need to be very careful of planting trees too close to the septic system. That really, there's some area that's going to be off limits there, and I'm not sure it's shown on the plan exactly, where that would be. So that's something to be aware of. And then I'm afraid I'm a little bit lost with the 8x8 and 10x10 jargon. I'm really not following what you mean by that. So if somebody could clarify what you mean by 5x5 or 8x8 or whatever, I really don't know what you're talking about.
It's a spacing. So if each tree, assuming shrubs, right, if they can grow, you space it out as like in 10 feet, so it's assuming they are going to cover an area of like a 10 by 10 is about 100 square feet. If you spacing out like an 8, that will be 8 by 8 is 64 square feet. If you by 5, it's 25 square feet. So based on that, then you can calculate the total number of plants in a given area. So that's what pretty much all people do that. That's a pretty much standard practice. But
so you would be talking about a fixed number of plants in the different areas that you're talking about.
No, I think we get to measurable to disturbed. The total number of it is based on what we disturb. You cannot based on the total square footage of the enhancement area, which is already have existing plants there. So we're trying to enhance it. So in a way, that's what based on any kind of, even including wetland application. So it's still doing like that. Right now we are doing something I feel is kind of more or less experimental. I mean, if it's not the first project, I have worked in town for so many years, decades. This is probably one of the projects get to the nitty-gritty level to this much. And I'm not saying, I think it's a good thing to do, but I hope we can work it out like a pilot project rather than to dictate into the final result, because I hope the commission as well as myself is carry and learning, improving hard for working better, not just putting everybody.
I agree with you.
Project.
I'm going to try to cut off, because if we're going to get through this, it's already been a half an hour. I'm trying to think of how we operationalized, and I agree with just what you were saying there. And I guess we have a commission issue. I mean, I'm circling, I'm not sure where this is the area where you have the 100 to 125. And to the extent that whether you're proposing that there would be some planting here, that would be what? Would it not be, all of this is planned to be lawn? Is this something that would?
There's also
lawn?
on the driveway side, you have it.
No, this is already, there's no buffer zone over here, and the buffer zone goes off down here. The only buffer zone here in the one is the driveway itself, basically. I guess there's a little bit here, but the separated from the driveway doesn't seem to be useful. Even if you were doing, I have issues about this going beyond the 100, but what would it actually look like if you were doing some plantings out here in the, would it be lawn with landscaped? It would be a fully landscaped area with some shrubs?
Yeah, that if I may, right, as I just trying to explain is, I don't mind incorporating the idea, but we forget one party is the homeowner. So I feel if you condition it, do this many plans, the final landscaping plan, including the 100 to 125 foot buffer, would be at least we cannot have invasive species into it. So we can working that out later on. I don't think that
can I,
tonight we
can I
we're going to
inter- can I
work it out.
interrupt? Can I interrupt? That is outside our jurisdiction. I think we can make suggestions. It is outside our jurisdiction. I don't want to monitor that. I don't want to have that part of the mitigation. I don't see where the footing is for us to verify that it's been done. I don't know how you'd condition it. I don't think we can do that. I mean, in my mind, I know you guys are sort of talking about density and this and that. I mean, aren't we just going to talk about sort of what the species are, what the area of mitigation? I guess what I'm wondering really at this point in the discussion is what's really in contention right now? What have we not settled?
I guess with the number of the number of shrubs that would go in there, and talking a little bit more about the herbaceous level, as well as then the protection of all of this. And then there's a bunch of little things.
So what's the commission's suggestion and what's the applicant's suggestion in terms of the number of shrubs?
We maybe could deal with 100 shrubs.
Okay.
As a lower thing there with a lower, which is sort of like a density that would be overall, I think it should be clumped, would be like 8 by 8 if they did 100 shrubs in the mitigation area versus they're at 33.
So, and where did we start? Did we start at like something higher than 100?
Well, we could have done 100 if we did 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 as an
I see.
average.
So it's an
It
area.
would have been higher.
So it's an
Um,
area problem. Like that's why DeShang is saying if you plant more spread out, there's fewer shrubs, but his argument is it's better from a
Right,
survivability.
and it is tricky with all the trees there and everything else. It's hard to say. I could see we could come down, but 33 to me, others might feel differently. Seems a little low. I would like to go higher, even as DeShang was talking about, at least into the 50s, maybe. I
Okay.
don't know, feel differently, but
What
and
about
that would-
60?
Okay, you can play a broker like that.
I'm going to, because I think that's really, I don't hear yet so far any contention around the area. I hear the contention around the density and the number of shrubs, and some of it obviously is going to be a cost thing from the applicant side. And for us, it's a habitat improvement, given that we're allowing some alteration in the outer buffer, in an undisturbed outer buffer. So yes, I think it's all a matter of negotiation. I don't think this is a conceptual disagreement in any way.
Right,
Unless I'm
so
mistaken.
as I give you the numbers, the ordered 35, 39 divided by 8 spaced, we get at about 55. But since that plant number is not planting back to the same square footage, we're trying to enhance more. But don't forget, like even if you put dogwood there, I planted like a 3 foot, just one stem, silky dogwood in my front yard. Next time I'm going to show you the picture.
Well,
Just in a few years, they floated out like in a
This is
tremendous,
I'm
okay?
thrilled to hear it, but I wish the commission had more time to look at these kinds of things. I'd
Right,
rather.
no, I can tell you because
No,
I
I-
not just imagine. I practice in.
Are
this.
we up
That's
to
why
55 and
if
do we
you
go
put it so
higher?
dense, it's
I think
just not-
55,
it's-
DeShang, I understand. I just don't, to me, I'm sort of stripping it down to brass tacks here. I apologize. I'm sort of a practical person in this way. So let's talk about this some more. So 55? Is that what I heard Michael say?
Well, DeShang, when I see his logic for 55, I would want to go a bit higher, but I guess, right, it is an art, and the fact that we have a lot of trees there.
23 trees.
And-
Oh, we are going to
Right.
add to.
All right, hold
that
on,
should be
DeShang.
credited.
Let somebody talk. Just hold on.
Okay.
Finish up what you were saying, Michael.
Carol goes, I could probably live with the 55, even though I'd want more, but I would like to move on so that we could get
Yeah,
through.
all right, so hold on. I've got my person at the other end of the spectrum, which I think is Carol. So Carol, what do you think of 55?
I don't think it should really be an arbitrary number like that, because I agree with DeShang about the disturbance, especially in the area of the woodland that's not disturbed. I think we should, there will be a point of diminishing returns if we.
So is 55 too high, or you think that's the right number given DeShang's analysis?
I mean, like Anna, I feel like this kind of throwing around of numbers is just too confusing, to be very honest. Like,
Right, but the problem is that we're trying to establish sort of a certain layer of a certain herbaceous layer. And we're trying to determine what's best in
Shrub
terms
layer.
of Shrub layer, thank you. We're trying to establish what is an imperfect, the art of figuring out what's the best density for the protecting the interests of the wetland, the eight interests of the Wetland Protection Act. I think honestly, if Carol, you and Anna, you also think that, Deshang's analysis is reasonable and 55 is a good number, I think we should put that to bed and move on to the next thing.
Courtney, what do you think?
I think we should put that to bed and move on to the next thing.
Fantastic, let's go. What's
Okay,
next?
then we have the herbaceous layer. Gone through trees to shrubs. Let's see, and we have the that what you proposed is the hay-scented fern and some of this basically ground little cover there, and then the wild seed mix. I guess, I don't know if, I guess I had talked with Courtney about whether, and she might speak about whether that in order to, I agree that there's some importance here of protecting, where's my cursor here? Get it over here. Here. That the area where the alteration of the buffer zone goes there, that this area here is probably the most important for planting overall. So that because we have the smaller distance from human activity to the wetlands. The idea of planting the no-mow grass that we had put forth was really for covering this whole area here. Where it was going to be disturbed maybe in some kind of lawn. The question is whether it came up of whether disturbing this area more than just planting shrubs by that the idea of doing a seed mix, which would require some reasonable disturbance, doesn't seem to make sense because it's going to cause probably more disturbance than we'd like versus just doing the shrub and tree planting. And whether the question is whether we basically would want to come up with some plan, again, that whether there's some sort of plugs, whether maybe it's not hay-scented fern, but maybe other ideas have come up with some sort of Pennsylvania sedges or a foam flower, that they're plugs and that we have to come up with to get through this process. Like I mean, that's partly why I wanted to come up with some quantity, coming back to the beginning of some quantities based on some overall average densities, and then maybe then just come back to a plan that incorporates that. That whether there's some density of herbaceous layer that we want to put in here, whether there's some areas where we're going to do sort of 12 on 12 more dense plugs. The 3-inch on set, the 3 foot on center plugs doesn't seem like much would happen, although I guess we don't like the hay-scented fern because it doesn't seem to be, it gets too dense and it's not necessarily a great habitat. With some consensus here. That I want to come up with a way of agreeing that there's some herbaceous layer of some few thousand square feet that we want with some density, and then we could figure out later where to put it all. But just to get this first round of numbers with 23 trees, 55 shrubs, some number, some square footage or some number of plugs that I want to get through. And if it was on 1 foot plugs, and we
Well,
were doing
let's go with your general concept first, that we need some number of plugs. Deshang, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, so, okay, I'm just trying to, so before our alterations basically to this 57 foot, we pull back almost 10 feet, and then we saved some trees, but we did cut some white pines. The reason is, if you go looking into this existing, go looking, it's still there. Go looking, or you have experience. If you have a mature white pines, you cannot put anything under. It's not going to survive. Okay, so we have to be practical. I don't want to. I'm not against. So Mike, what your suggestion is, that's why I propose to cut some of pines, just leaving as a stump, as like a snack there. It's to help to establish even the shrubs, whatever we can grow. They do right now, the disturbed area in the buffer zone, except those pine trees, there's almost nothing. It's just the pine needles on the ground. And so the only function is that needle mats is for erosion control. And but on the far left, that area, I believe Cindy is not here, but as Carol's here, we observed a pretty dense pine ground cover, which is like club moss. They can extend in like evergreen vines. They can extend in and get dense. It's have a really good evergreen ground cover. And also for erosion control, we are replicating or we are disturbed, and we go much more beyond what we really disturbed the function. So I feel if we control some of the pines and that's the ground cover, it's a unless you know better than I observed and that my experience, I will follow that. But who is going to guarantee that survival? If you put any plugs in there and it's coming back, say, hey, you are not surviving, you plant more. That's why I was doing a combination. So with the on-site already proving survive or vividly growing ground pine club moss family with mixed native ground cover seed mix. So you will provide a much better ecological adoption way. You, not me, not you, because I to be honest, I know a lot, but I still humbly say I don't know every specific site will, all the things will survive.
Hold on. I feel like we're really all over the place here. So Michael was talking about the idea of putting plugs somewhere. If you're saying that they're not going to survive under pine trees, I'd agree with you, but that's not the entirety of the mitigation area, is it? Because there is some tree removal. So if Michael's sort of wondering where we might put these things, obviously under the pines is not one of those places. I want us to not philosophize. I want us to get the task done. Sorry. So
no, that's why seed mix
yes.
around this strip where
Yeah.
immediate downgrading of the proposed buffer zone disturbance, because I agree that that's the most needed protected area, not going anywhere else. They already have a natural ground cover growing there. I mean, I feel the seed mix is when you plant the trees, all the things, when you have some disturbed area, you see,
Right.
you know, you put some seeds over there. You don't want too much of things growing right away around your planted shrubs because it's going to compete the nutrients and moisture and to kill them. So what's the point?
So then are there areas that are going to be disturbed, like you're saying, that could use some sort of herbaceous layer in this
No,
mitigation
we are
area?
not disturbed. We are not disturbed anything rather than just this 35, 39 square feet of 65 to 100 foot buffer zone, which is a very small area in my view. And we have a house there and a very like a 15-foot strip of lawn. I mean, we can. That's what I suggest. We will, after this cleared out, we will try our best to establish around that edge of the lawn with all the seed mix into, because there's a sun coming in. After we remove some of the pine crown, it will providing habitat and a grow chance to into that strip. That's what our effort and my effort, my design idea, we get to focus in that area because that's the most vulnerable area. If we go in other places, it's already well established. It's waste our effort.
Okay. All right. Understood. Carol, did you have a comment?
Well, I have a question for you, Dishang. I wanted to understand a little more clearly. The limit of work is at the, is right there at the edge of this green area, right? That's the limit of work.
Right.
No, it's actually on the outside.
No, the outside is for planting protection, but the real limit of work after enhancement, if anything in the circle area, it's just for limited planting and the seeding. After we are done, that will be left undisturbed forever. So,
so let me understand. Are you saying that the limit of work is really what's on the plan says limit of lawn? That's where the
correct.
limit of disturbance
That's
is?
correct. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that everything else, even
It's
in the places, where everything outside of the limit of lawn is where, for the most part, the trees are remaining, except there are, a couple of white pines and a red
Right.
maple that are being removed just outside the
correct.
lawn. But
Right.
that the rest of it is literally going to be undisturbed, and you are not going to have any machines in there or anything. And even like the ground cover won't be disturbed.
No, well, that's why partially I'm hesitate to put in too much shrubs there. You saw it over there,
Yeah.
that area. It's a very dense ground cover. You want us to dig in every 5 feet space. You have to dig in at least 3 foot of a hole, because you specified 1 gallon, and for landscaping to survive, you have to dig in 3 times of the size of your root ball. You almost disturb the whole area. What's the point? I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the running ground pine that was there, I mean, it's winter, it's hard to tell. That's what we could see, right? I mean, one possibility might be to defer some decisions about this till the spring, when we can see what's coming up in that natural area, because for all we
Adjust
know,
the
there
number.
could be hay-scented fern there. There could be other things there. And, do the landscaping plan in the spring when we actually can see it on the ground a little better. And I know that's, I know that Michael and Neil, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, let's get this done. But
Well, that's part of, but fitting with that was the idea of whether we could finalize a plan later to fit with what you're just saying, but we'll see where we come to that. But there is that way there. But I guess, yeah, just so you know that in terms of the density of before Courtney goes there, I mean, with the 55 shrubs now, we're talking about in the 6,300 square feet roughly. We're talking about that spacing now of close to 11 by 11. So it's much less dense there, and there's room to not disturb it. And I agree with you. I don't want to disturb too much. And I'm not sure whether, and I'll see what Courtney says, whether, right, do we want to have any herbaceous layer supplement? And whether just planting seeds along here, that would disturb the ground, the untouched ground too much to do a seed thing that works. But
I don't think that, I
Courtney.
think overseeding wouldn't disturb, I don't know if it would work or not, but basically the idea presumably you might be introducing some native species that were not present, and they would come up, and I don't know how well that works if you don't disturb the earth to give them a chance. Dishang, have you had experience with doing that?
Yeah, around the edge of it, you can basically rake out the leaves and then just get the top little, you don't need much for elevation. You don't need to deep, you don't need to, like in your planting shrubs, even plugs, you only need to loosen the top couple of inches, but not all the way. Wherever you have a good sun exposure, you overseed it. But if you go in under the shade, it's not going to work. So that's only very few species can work. So like the cloud moss in the hardwood area, but not under the pine trees. I don't see anything really grow under pine trees, for a sustainable.
I think I agree with you, Dishang. It sounded like Neil agreed too, because those of us who have pine trees on their property know that it's pretty hard to get anything going under there.
Yep.
Courtney.
I've almost lost my train of thought at this point. The whole point of putting in the shrubs is trying to enhance what's there. So I can understand that we wouldn't want to disturb, if it's mostly club moss or whatever, if there's some ground cover, we can preserve some of that, but it's also not like some kind of healthy magical habitat right now. I mean, we have a severe overpopulation of deer, and if you can get shrubs to grow by protecting them till they get to a certain size, that is habitat that is being destroyed by the deer. There are birds that nest in there, like ground nesting birds, things that really have trouble because the deer have destroyed forest regeneration in the town. So I think that's kind of my thinking with putting in shrubs. And I don't anticipate that we should, go and disturb the ground beyond where we're sticking in a couple shrubs. I don't see that putting some seed around the shrubs is better than, putting in a few plugs with the shrubs. And I mean, when things are small, that's the best time to plant them and have them grow up together. So that you're not like destroying someone else's roots. They kind of knit together better that way. So
So we
that's
have to-
kind of what I'm thinking there.
We have to resolve how we're gonna quantify or somehow specify some herbaceous layer or not, and how much we want the seed mix done along this. I guess that's the issue, to make this practical. And Neil can somehow figure out how to make us come to a decision of whether we want to go through scratching up this thing here to put in some native New England wildlife mix of something here that's along the edge of, that's in the, so that we're mucking around there. And then the other question is, do we have this 55 shrubs? If we want to do Courtney's idea, do we want to have four plugs or so around each of these things there to sort of help grow in that area over there? If I heard you right, Courtney, that it would be a good mix, and whether we don't need to have much of an herbaceous layer specification here, and just if we have 55 shrubs, you do 4 or 5 plugs per shrub, and we quantify it that way, and then we see what makes the most sense when you do the planting. And we have some couple of hundred plugs that we just want to get in there to enhance some of the herbaceous layer where we do the shrub planting, or maybe somewhere we do the tree planting, another 100 or something there. And so that we can move beyond this at 8:30 now. Whether we find a way to Neil to force some sort of a level of herbaceous layer, whether DeShang, you're willing to live with maybe 4 plugs per planting or something, that we, whether we decide to put it at the shrubs, or we focus them in some area that seems bare when we look at what's going on in the spring.
Michael, can I make a couple suggestions?
Good.
The place that's most likely to get disturbed is the limit of lawn. So I'd say if we're going to try to group together and kind of densify native plantings, and I agree with what Courtney said about the plugs, that's obviously the minimal disturbance, then one possibility is to say, okay, let's do it right there at the limit of lawn. And the other thing I was going to suggest, because Neil, you were uncomfortable about doing anything beyond the 100, is maybe adding shrubs or trees along the 100-foot buffer on the bottom of the property there. It's in jurisdiction. I don't remember that much about it, except that side of the property looked kind of trashed. It looked kind of, there was more disturbance on that side, and it's still in the 100. It would still help the wetlands. I mean, it's not the part that we're focusing on, but it would be a form of mitigation, because I think what we're getting hung up with here is that, how do we enhance the wetlands as a way of compensating for the buffer that is disappearing? So that might be another thing to consider.
So how do we quantify this? I mean, I am open to whether some plantings were done along there versus here to some extent. If you feel that it turns out the 55 is maybe not easy to place in there, that if it was placed around the edge of the work here, that would be fine too. That's why, again, coming back to the original issue of whether we can quantify what we want, and then a plan could be done. That I'm not sure we're going to get through a plan tonight if we want to, how far we get. And versus that we condition it so that a final plan with these sort of 23 trees, 55 shrubs, maybe if you're looking at a length here, if we want to put in plugs or seed mix, whether we want to agree to put in some sort of a New England specific mix that we want to put along, I don't know, a 2 to 3 foot barrier along wherever there's an edge of lawn here.
Yep.
And,
I mean, that's
and we
one
don't, and
where
we
I
only
think
have some
hay-scented
plugs.
Hay-scented fern would probably do quite well there and be tenacious. And I
That's
don't know, what do you think, Courtney?
I have to disagree with the hay-scented fern.
Yeah, I know you don't like it.
Well, no, it's very nice, but the problem is it suppresses everything else. no insects feed on it, and it's the only thing left that the deer don't eat, and so it chokes off any like forest
We're
regeneration.
not getting to get into species now. We're gonna get through
Right.
this. So the
But-
question
but-
is,
But regardless, I agree with this idea that like if, you know, we're gonna put some broad guidelines together and then the planting specifics are gonna be worked out later, you know, when they're on site doing stuff in conjunction with the agent or whatever we decide. And if we say, okay, this 55 shrubs that are proposed, that's fine. And if they need to spread out and be put along the edge of the 100-foot, you know, where the limit of the lawn is, I think that sounds like a very reasonable plan.
but what about the herbaceous? What are we gonna say that we're willing to have some sort of native New England wildlife, some sort of mix that's done in a foot or two, a few foot barrier along there, and then leave it at that.
Let me say this. I think those are all good ideas. The only thing I'd say is in almost every other situation like this, we talk about generally what we want to do. And then we say, you know, in consultation with the commission, this stuff will be placed in places that are appropriate. I don't know that we need to, you know, really figure out every species or I mean, I think it's okay to identify areas that we think are most likely, and whether or not do we want to add plugs as like a, you know, some addition to the mitigation effort for an herbaceous layer. And it sounds like we kind of do, although, you know, where that's going to go and how much of it there is still open for debate, but I don't know that we necessarily need to decide all that tonight. I just feel like I want us to be conceptually on the same page with each of these sort of elements at a larger scale, and then we can drill into the nitty gritty. That's just my take on it, because that's just
I think we're
generally
there
how
on
we've
that,
done it.
but how do we do the conceptual level? I was just saying, I see your hand, but
Well, I think
the
it's been up
question-
for a while, unless.
but it's, the question is whether we agree that there's gonna be some, how do we do this so we can condition this thing and move on as in terms of the herbaceous layer, in terms of
So-
plugs, and that we're gonna have some wildlife mix along the edge that could be up to 2 or 3 feet along the edge of lawn.
That sounds good so far.
And then do we want any plugs elsewhere around the shrubs? Do we want 4 plugs per shrub? So we're gonna have 200 plugs that are just gonna be spread around, so that, and that could be decided later, but we have a number.
Yeah, let's put a number on it, and then to be decided in consultation with the commission.
And I would
Jane,
just
can you
say
live
when
with
it comes
something like
to,
that?
with the plugs, I would kind of suggest, you know, the place where there's most likely to be disturbance is along the limit of lawn, and plugs would probably thrive there really well. And
Great.
take.
So
and then
that's the in consultation part. I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Shane, could you go along with the agreement to try to get through this?
Yeah, I think we get to be practical how to implement it, and I agree. It's a general discussion. That's what I would agree with, is to
Okay, great.
around the limit of the lawn. Let's put in a condition rather than go to all the details at this point. Because
Agreed.
it will never end. So we
Right,
say,
we
let's
and
get-
and
right,
why I'm trying-
that's all we need to say.
right, let's get the tree number agreed. And let's
Yes.
get the shrub number agreed. Okay, 23, 55, and then 2 to 5 feet, depend on the sun, penetration. 2 to 5 feet of strip of combination plug and New England wildflower seed mix combination, and to be worked out with the agent and the consult with the
Perfect.
commission to
Okay,
to
and
to
and that's
approve.
going, and that is
Done.
all the way around the limit of work.
Done.
Yeah,
Next.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
but not the stormwater, not the just on the western side.
Okay.
All right, what's next?
Oh,
wait,
hold on, just to be clear,
Michael, I think Michael.
Hold on,
missed-
one person at a
uh,
time. Carol, what did you want to say?
Michael, I thought maybe you might have misspoken because you said all along the limit of work, but
A
we. have
lawn.
not- Okay, thank you.
All right.
question
Michael?
is, but I'm not sure whether Shang, are we agreeing that we're only doing it between here and here on this, or do you want to, or are we going to try to do a little?
No, I think we can go around it, go the whole south and west. So
Okay,
we-
fine, we're in
Follow,
agreement, done.
yeah,
Alright, great.
follow
Okay,
the
done.
100-foot buffer zone line,
great.
or the
Fine.
limit of the lawn, so.
Okay, no
whichever
more
is-
needs to be said. Moving on. So we talk about survival rates of 75% for shrubs and for the herbaceous layer, whatever we do, and 90% for trees. Is there, that
No
would be.
objection.
Now, what about, do we want a condition, and what do you think, Deshang? How are you gonna get this protected? Do we want a condition? We're gonna say survival rates, and maybe we don't have to say anything more and just let you play with how you want to protect it,
Yes,
the way the commission is, okay. Then let's see, we've gotten through that. You've done the snags, you've done the trees there. Now, if we're gonna, right now, we have issues. The last part then is species selection. I think given some differences of opinion here about what an arborvitae could do as a giant versus not a giant, to get through this thing, I'd like to still kick that off to when we do a landscape plan, that I'm coming back to, that we condition a landscape plan, that we get approval, and that'll involve all the species choices of shrubs and trees. And that we're not going to do that as part of this meeting. And that we're going to require that kind of detail in a plan that will get approved by the commission later. The location, we have that there, the trees. Okay, moving on to other issues.
Michael, are you reading from something that we can also see? Just
No,
curious.
this is just my list of issues that I had wrote for myself.
Okay.
That parallel. But those were in those numbers were in the comments that we sent them. So that those 75 or whatever else. Now, in terms of monuments, documenting the edge, are these red marks here what you were suggesting? I couldn't see whether
Yes.
there's
Yes,
what's that?
yes, that's the one
Okay.
we gave you details, like a 4x4 concrete bounds, I mean. sticking
Okay,
out
no,
2
I just
feet.
want to suggest that. And
It's
see
a
what
straight
others
line.
feel. My sense is that I think it's great, the ideas of each of these corners. There's a monument here, which I guess sum up, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That I would suggest for the longer distances, that are about 100 feet, that at somewhere around the midpoint here, that we add monuments here. This is short enough. A monument in this length here. One more monument in this length. So that's 1, 2, 3.
3 more.
And I don't know what others feel that this is about 60 feet, whether we need one more monument here so that we're in the middle of the lawn. So there would be 4 more monuments there.
Or you wanted, because since right now it's a little bit different, when we do the landscaping, you are going to see a strip of a planting, that will almost demarcate edge of it. So, and with the 2 ends of straight line, so I think and there's a sticky note on the above ground 2 feet. It's not like a buried, so it would be.
Okay,
I don't think
I
we
guess
need
I could
too
live.
many.
I could live without these 2 here. I don't know what others think, but I think something here and something here, where there's not a lot of other demarcation, that would be useful. What do others think?
We can add 2.
I agree.
yep.
2 more. Yeah, add 2
Okay.
more, and then with this landscaping, you are going to approve it, right? So I think we
Okay.
will see with the landscaping incorporating all the edge of the lawn with the seed
Okay.
and pluck,
Done.
the bedding will be easy to see now.
Taken.
I'm
Next
sorry,
issue.
Michael, I'm sorry, I've lost track of this. Where are the monuments at the limit of lawn, or are there monuments?
These
at
are
the-
these marks here, this
The
red
red
mark
one,
here,
the
red
red
mark
square.
there. They're at each corner, where quote unquote corner.
And then what about the lawn right next to
There's
the
one
house?
here, there's one here, there's one here.
Okay,
There's a straight line and this here and this
Right,
one.
yeah, it's all straight lines.
that seems very reasonable to me. too.
Moving on. The stormwater management thing here that's downstream of this, just want to ask a question that's sort of new of whether this, I realize now that I've been staring at this area here, but this is where you're doing grading and bringing in some fill.
Yeah, I cannot
Whether
put in
this
there
could be
the slope.
shifted to here.
No, it's a slope. You don't have the coverage uniform. That's a steep slope. Only the back area actually providing that grades, which would meet all the groundwater requirements. We can.
Okay,
use
fine.
that.
I will just accept that. I just wanted to bring that up and question that. So we have the monuments. Other condition issues are, we have the snags that you're doing. You're leaving some down trees. We don't need all of them, but some. There's, I think, a condition about monitoring for invasives with manual removal in the buffer zone, in the outer buffer zone, each year. Then
That's
on
fine.
pesticides, that there are no pesticide use in the buffer zone. Is fairly standard there.
Yeah, no problem.
Fertilizer, but we sometimes vary between that there's no fertilizer used in the outer, even in the outer buffer zone. Sometimes we've allowed sort of, and the only area that you would have any fertilizer issues are in our jurisdiction are this lawn area here, whether we've allowed organic slow release nitrogen in the altered buffer zone. I don't know what people think, or whether we could avoid, since I'm trying to avoid nitrogen getting basically infiltrating down there. I'd like to have no fertilizer here, but whether you feel you need the fertilizer, Deshang, and whether the others feel strongly about just allowing it like we've done in the past in some areas in the outer buffer.
I feel you can condition with like organic slow release nitrogen, and my assessment is probably not much. If they put a thick enough loam there, which I will advise them to do, probably 6 to 8 inch loam, and that area is kind of with all the trees, and that not really that wide. It's probably fairly shaded, so probably the only concern is I'm concerned may even have some so close, probably more moss will come in, like in that habitat than the things we want. But moss is a native. I mean, for erosion control, I like it. You know?
Oh, yeah, no. What do others think about, what does commission members think about the nitrogen fertilizer option, low release organic?
I don't think we've done it pretty consistently, so I don't think tonight is the night to debate it.
Okay,
No, I have no problem. You can condition it.
But
as that.
Deshang, we're asking Carol, just
Oh,
give us a sec.
Were you, Courtney, were you saying that we've usually conditioned it as organic slow release?
I believe
Yes.
we've said that for people who have lawns in the,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's certainly
I'd
something we
rather
could,
have none, but I'll defer to that as something we've done in the past. I mean, I have some
We have.
concern just because.
and
it's so
we can
uphill,
discuss
but-
it as a topic, but I think that tonight on this project is not the place for the discussion.
okay, moving on. The fill, we'll have our standard fill conditions in there because you're putting in some fill in this area of the lawn here. I want to bring up something that is sort of new for us, that I could see whether you care, and maybe it's too late to bring up now, is that some work I've been doing on lighting at night based on, we replaced all our street lights in town, and it was an issue of the color of the lights to deal with wildlife and humans. Whether, since we rarely have a house going into new buffer zone there like this, whether there could be whether you'd be up for a condition that where any exterior lighting in this side of the house essentially is kept at the warmer light, the 3000 K, which is the warmer light. Some people I see use these outside lights that are 5000. They're touch too blue. It's not good for wildlife nor humans. But basically any lighting in this part of the house, maybe they'd like it for the whole, would be basically the warmer 3000 or less, which was maybe warmer, as well as it's not shining towards the wetland, and it's a dark sky, so it's not also shining up around, which is something new that we're starting to think about. Is that something that, so since it's something new, I will just ask you whether it's something that might make sense for them anyway. I think it's good for homeowners as well.
This is
No, I
lighting
go with
inside
it.
the
No,
house you're talking?
No, I'm talking about the, just on the outs, any exterior lighting that you have, that's like, people have these floodlights that shine out from homes.
So what did you say about the hall?
Hall, oh, I don't know, maybe I misspoke.
You're only talking about exterior lighting.
Only
Yes.
exterior lighting. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, no. Only
No,
exterior
yeah,
lighting.
I support it. I mean, for that, I mean, I always, that,
Great.
I have
Then we don't
gone
have to
through.
talk about it anymore.
Right,
If you're
right.
on board with it as the applicant.
Yeah, I'm on
that's
board.
fine.
Yes.
Great.
I am.
Yeah, no, it's a much warmer color lighting. Maybe it's all, I don't know. It's a much warmer color. You can see it all in our street lights now.
Wonderful.
We put in.
Yeah,
Move on.
just condition it, just condition.
Okay,
Move on.
Exactly.
let's see what else. I think my list is, we've got that there. I think I'm done with my list here.
Okay.
And I think we've sort of gone through everything, whether,
Great.
So I have one thing. So I don't want to specify the plants tonight, but just we should all agree that these are, and I think Tashing maybe put them on the plan somewhere about, these are all native, straight species, right? Because that's, so just to give you a heads up for the future, the arborvitae is not a native straight species. That's a cross between a Japanese cedar and a Western red cedar, the green giant. So just we don't have to discuss it tonight, but as long as we're all agreeing on the parameters, we can decide on all the plants later. I just want to give you.
says straight species, no cultivars is on this plan, but we could
Good.
have them add that. And
Yep.
there's going to be other little plan differences here on your sequencing here. 1 and 2 will make some comments about that you're going to stake the limit of work and get and have a pre-construction meeting. I'm not sure that you want to put in all of your, install all of your silt fences and everything else until you've got the work there. I would make this part here number 2 and basically put number 2 as part of number 1 so that you don't get into the mistake of staking it and then installing stuff that we have to move. And then I would, hopefully we can get a little documentation of your stormwater thing that you would turn in some photos when it's excavated and put there, that we get some photos before you backfill all of the stormwater thing there. Other than that, I think we have most of our standard conditions that you've seen before. And whether we, as a procedural issue, whether we end up, whether we keep the hearing open so that we draft the conditions between now and the next meeting and draft an order of conditions that we go over with you, Deshang, and give you a draft for our next meeting. And then we would basically be able to see if there's any issues. And then we'd be able to close it and approve it then.
I think,
We could also
I think
close the
that's
hearing
better.
now, but then we'd still
let's not do that. I feel like we're not quite there. And because we can close and vote next week or next meeting, if we have our ducks in a row, let's just keep it open for now. Unless, Deshang, you have some specific reason you want us to close it, I think we should keep it open.
The only one I know, I asked before, but I don't know if it can be done. The only thing is because the Border House is holding that their review unless they know we are going. I don't know how they practice it, but either we have to have an order of conditions, or Anna can write them, say the limit of work is already approved, and just work out the order of conditions
I
to
mean,
see if they can start their review. So
right.
that's all.
I think no matter what, we're going to need an order. So I still, just for where we are, I think with this, I feel like let's take one more pass. We'll have the conditions written. We'll be able to bang it out, hopefully all the next meeting.
If they need
That's
order
fine.
conditions, you're saying then it's not going to speed it up. Because we
Exactly,
won't
that's what
have
I'm
it
saying.
to the next. So whether we
That's-
open or close, the hearing's not going to make a difference other than
Right.
Yeah.
we
Okay,
try. We
fine.
could try the approach of talking to them and seeing.
No,
But I
they
don't want to
won't.
get
Let's
out of
not
their
do that.
procedures.
Let's not do
Yeah.
that.
They won't.
Yeah,
They're
let's
they're
not.
very
All right,
strict
so-
about it. It doesn't
Right.
matter if we've closed the hearing, so if,
Okay.
yeah,
So we're done.
All
yeah,
right.
we'll
So
wrap it up next time.
yeah, I move that we continue this hearing to April 7th at what time, Elizabeth?
8 PM.
8 PM.
And it shouldn't take very long then.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, aye. Courtney,
aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. All right. Smoke them if you got them. We'll see you at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Deshang.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. So we'll see you in 9 minutes, 8 minutes.
Unless, I mean, I guess is there something urgent that Anna
No,
might
it's
need?
we revised the agenda.
Oh, that's right. No, oh, yeah, we didn't include any of her discuss issues. Okay,
Yep.
fine.
All right, so go get a
That's
drink.
Yeah, right.
Go you know.
Yes, let's.
All right,
we'll
I'm gonna
leave it at
pause.
that.
I'm gonna pause recording for the next few minutes, and then I'll see you in just a little bit. All right. I see Courtney, I see Carol, I see Michael, I see me. And because of the screen share, I now see other people. too.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to get rid of it.
Oh, there we go. All righty. And I think Anna also, because she's looked at this project too. So maybe we just Anna, if you're there, it's 9 o'clock. There she is. All right. Okay, so I think we have everybody. So this is the an RDA for 9 Kendall Avenue. Okay.
So
And,
Karen Skinner-Catroni, present to represent the owner, Bill Bernard, the owner of 9 Kendall Ave, where the proposed work is being proposed. So the property is 4.93 acres. The wetlands were flagged in September of 21. The applicant is proposing only the replacement of a failed septic system. The system is being proposed in the location shown on the plan because they're trying to keep it a gravity-fed system. This system will be replaced with an Elgin system, which is an advanced treatment system. The current system is contaminated because it's in the ground. It's in the groundwater now. This system will be 2 feet above the groundwater, which is allowed with an advanced treatment system. The existing system will be pumped, crushed, and filled with sand. There's a stockpile area shown outside the buffer. A compost sock and construction fence are also shown. So we did show the riverfront area, 100 and 200 foot riparian zones, but septic systems are exempt. I think Anna can speak for me on that. And it's outside the 50-foot buffer. So I think that's about it, unless you have some questions.
Anna, you said you had some feedback you'd like to give as well?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just give a quick tour of the site.
Oh, I didn't even have this plan asked up.
Oh, well, just wanting to show these pictures. You can see the soil test pit with the the evidence of soil test pits, and then the wetlands off to the right. And that's the plan, but people have it in the Dropbox. So if people don't feel the need for it to be up, I can stop.
No, leave it up. It's good.
All right. That's, yes. So you have the regulations in the Dropbox that show that even when there's riverfront area, septic systems are exempt from the riverfront area regulations. So I was going to ask about alternatives analysis, but that's really a riverfront area thing. So I don't think we have to get into that. So that's all I have.
Okay. This specifically around the regulations in riverfront area, is it that the system has to be, the replacement system has to be an upgrade of some kind, correct?
So this is an upgrade. This is an advanced treatment system.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's an improvement over the existing. for,
Well, the existing's failed.
right, the existing's failed and it's also, it's in groundwater. So yeah, understood. Okay.
Right.
All right. What questions do people have?
I wanted to ask about dewatering. Ms. Skinner-Catroni, you said you didn't think there was a need for dewatering. Is that something that you're confident to confirm?
Yeah, I spoke to the engineer tonight and he doesn't believe that it'll be necessary either, but if so, we usually do straw bales and then a fabric over it and then feed the water into that. So it's, the silt is removed before the water is let go.
And that would have
But
to
the
be
engineer
placed.
didn't. What's
Yeah.
that?
It would be great if that could be placed outside of the 100-foot
Okay,
buffer area, if you have to do that.
okay, yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
And in terms of, so Anna, I don't know if sometimes we've in the past produced application summaries where there's sort of some baseline conditions. I don't know if I don't see it in Dropbox, but I don't know if that's something that you had a chance to do.
I didn't.
Okay. So in terms of like standard conditions, like you had said something about stockpiling, Karen, and I'm just wondering like where that's going to be and that kind of
So
stuff.
the stockpile area is shown on the plan outside the 100-foot buffer.
Okay, wonderful. So, but all right. So, but if this is riverfront, where are we talking? Sorry, I'm sort of really paying close attention to this for the first time, and I apologize for that. But I just wanted, if you could just point out where it is and where it is in relation to the 200-foot sort of riverfront area.
So you can see the riverfront, the 100-foot riverfront area is running approximately through the center of the screen.
Right.
Excuse me, the dotted line. And you can see just above that, going towards Kendall, the words Kendall Ave is the stockpile area.
Okay. And so you've got sort of whatever sort of erosion protections around that.
So that, yes, so that line that's going around the stockpile and down around the system, that's a compost sock and orange.
Okay.
So what conditions do we need? We have the erosion control.
You could add the dewatering to the condition.
Dewatering will be done outside the 100-foot.
Yeah.
There's I guess disturbed areas will be returned. And no stock, I guess no storage of I mean, the problem is here we have the riverfront. I mean, but at least all the stuff is outside of the 100-foot riparian, inner riparian area, which is much more protective than the outer 100. So in terms of storage of equipment, it would be, that's another one that we typically use for an RDA and regular one.
So the driveway will be used as access. So
Okay.
any machinery can be stored on the driveway.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Let's put that in as well, Anna.
Okay, any other conditions that we need?
Did you already talk about covering the soil stockpile?
I
No.
don't think it will be there that long. They
Okay.
won't, it won't be there more than a day.
Okay, I think we had talked when we did 53 Elliott just a few weeks ago, we had asked if it's going to be there even overnight to have a tarp over it, I think.
That's fine. You can put that as a condition.
Okay,
All right. Anything else?
maybe not. This looks pretty
Wow.
straightforward and needed.
Great.
Right.
Okay. In that case, so this is what are the, I don't,
It's just a
positive.
-3. We don't do the positives anymore.
right. No, I know. I'm just, if it's riverfront, does that change the -3 determination? Well, it's within. My memory's
I
terrible.
don't think it does, but yeah,
Fine.
but that's a good question.
Okay, I move that we approve this as an RDA as a -3. That it's within buffer, but won't have any significant impact.
Right, it's in riverfront, right.
Yeah, riverfront. Yeah,
Second,
thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
aye.
Neil, I. Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries.
Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you, you too.
You too.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
All right, well,
Well, Neil, before you
Yes.
close, thank you, Karen.
Oh, thank you.
So there's a certificate of compliance that needs reissuance that we did inform the applicant it was taken off the agenda, but they really do strongly need this reissuance because there's going to be a closing of house closing. And if we can allow that to be on the agenda, I guess you already voted that it was.
Maybe we can vote to open it up for that.
And Elizabeth knows more about this than I do.
I'm willing to find a way to do it I mean, is it clear that they've met all the conditions and everything? Is it simple?
It was issued in the early 90s. We have the original COC that was issued. It was just never recorded. So they just need a new one to record.
And when do they need it by?
They're closing March 31st. So it'll be after our next meeting. It'll be before our next meeting.
I move that this is a critical timing issue and that we revise the agenda to include it.
So the only thing is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I did. I seconded it.
Thank you. Just as a point of discussion, I think that it would have been beneficial to address this right at the beginning. Because now anybody who might have wanted to participate has certainly left, although I think the likelihood of it is very low. And given the emergency-ish nature of it, I think it's okay. But in the future, if there's anything like this, when we're going to revise our agenda, let's address it up front.
So we don't usually take things off the agenda, do we? I mean,
Generally,
usually
we don't.
we
And I
get
think
to the meeting, we just say this discussion is not being held tonight.
Right, and I know other boards do take it off, and that's kind of why I voted, especially since it was a pretty big change. I wanted to vote on it. But yes, generally, you're right. We don't take things off. We just kind of say we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like that's, I don't know.
Okay, well, look, there's a motion and a second, and is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
All right.
Neil, I, Courtney,
I
Carol?
Aye.
All right, we're in this together. All right, so, okay, in that case, the COC, what information is there that you can give us about it? Just a brief synopsis or whatnot.
It was for when the house was built in the early 90s. I think it was 93. It was signed off on by the commission then and issued, but it was never recorded.
I see.
So they need a new one to record.
Okay.
And they're closing on the 31st.
All right. I move that we issue a new COC for them to record.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, Michael?
Right.
Neil, I, Courtney,
I
Carol?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Any other business?
Please stop by the Blue Bin and sign the RDA for 9 Kendall and the COC. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay.
Was it in there this week
It
earlier?
was I put it in there yesterday. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
might have side that I can't tell. Okay.
All right. Well, in that case, Michael, enjoy your daughter's visit, and everybody else have a good night. I move we adjourn.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil? I? Courtney?
I
Carol?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks,
Elizabeth,
everybody.
Anna, have a good night. Everybody else have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.